At the moment, we're being told no. And that may be a surprise to some Manchester United fans. No, the information we've had on Sky Sports News today is that Manchester United are not intending to do business in January. There is always a but, because there is a long way between now and January and things can change. And that's obviously with the backdrop that they will be losing players to AFCON in December as well. We know that they are interested in a number 6, a holding midfielder, someone who can be that pivot in front of the back four. That was a target for Ruben Amorim over the course of the summer. They weren't able to action that particular position that they'd have liked to have done, but they do have an interest in Carlos Baleba, Adam Wharton and Elliot Anderson. So that is a role that they are looking to fill. But will it happen in January? We're being told that's not going to be the case.
Alan, are you surprised by that?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised by that, because I think Manchester United have started well. But when you look at them as a team, what would you say the weakness is? Well, it's definitely energy in central midfield area. And a younger midfield player, a pivot-type player in that, what they've got at the top of the pitch at the moment, certainly would help their cause. I don't think they actually got financial room to do anything. You know, it was pretty tight in the summer with the business that they did. So there's a lot of factors involved there. If I was Amorim, I genuinely think that I would stick at the moment. I think his team's done okay. I don't think they're under massive pressure to find Champions League position this year. He needs just a strong season to kind of stabilise that club, and then look to Europe next year, and maybe the summer window would make more opportunity for them. You mentioned PSR there, actually. Their turnover in the recent set of accounts to June 2025 was £666 million. And we know that turnover allows you to go and spend money. They were reasonably tight with regards to what they could do with PSR. But because they had quite an effective selling window with regards to Scott McTominay, Mason Greenwood, Alejandro Garnacho, and they got 3 players out on loan in Jadon Sancho, Rasmus Højlund and Marcus Rashford, which saves them around £700,000 a week. The 3 players they sold, being all from the academy, represent really good PSR profit. Yep. So actually they've got a little bit more headroom than perhaps people initially thought, because they were so good with the business they did with players getting out. So again, Manchester United fans will turn and say, well, actually, those problems that we had in the summer where we're a bit concerned about what we could spend and PSR rules, you've sorted that out, kind of. So that means you have got some money to spend in January. And if we can sniff the Champions League, why wouldn't you go and back Ruben Amorim, particularly on this good run that they're on at the moment?
Well, one thing I'd say as well, the narrative has been these 3 players who are going to the Africa Cup of Nations, in Brian Mbeumo, Amad Diallo, have been very key to them so far this season, and Noussair Mazraoui as well. But you've got to remember, these are not long-term injuries. These are not long-term absences. They're going to be out for 4 or 5 weeks. So Manchester United have got to think about this. Do they go into the market and bring in players to cover the players who are going to the Africa Cup of Nations? What happens when these players come back to the players that they brought in? Do they then go onto the bench and then these players are back into the team? It's one of those ones where they've got to take a little bit of a step back. And as we've been mentioning before, I think they will only go into the market if there's a long-term injury, number one. And also if there's this market opportunity that they simply cannot turn down. Because just to substitute and bring in players who have gone to the Africa Cup of Nations, it's such a short-term absence for these players. When they come back, what happens? Yeah, well, there's also another case here where the balance of the squad, for the first time at Man United, for the last 2 or 3 years that I can remember, there's not noises coming out the training ground that there's bad attitude, bad situations going on, people falling out with each other. It seems to be like he's got a happier camp, right? So as a manager, if I was looking at that, I wouldn't want that to change at this particular time. I want to keep that very stable. So the 3 guys go to AFCON, okay, they go and do their work, but they're coming back, that's okay. Only, I think, a major injury will Man United react.
About this lunchtime, we're going to talk about Manchester United now, because 11 games in, United are 7th, ahead of Liverpool and a point off the top 4. But will they look to strengthen? Well, Rob Dorset joins us from England's training camp at Tottenham's training ground now. Rob, a very good afternoon to you. So are United content with their squad right now?
Yes, I think they pretty much are content with the squad, and so is Ruben Amorim as well. Now, look, the impression I get is that Amorim would like to strengthen because, of course, you've got Benjamin Sesko, who's got an injury problem that we gave some more detail on yesterday on Sky Sports News. He's expected to be out until after the international break, several weeks, but they're monitoring him. And, of course, they're going to lose Bryan Mbeumo and Amad Diallo to the African Cup of Nations in about a month's time as well. So I think Amorim would like to strengthen, but the reality is United are not looking to strengthen in January. They're pretty content, very content, in fact, with the business they did in the summer. And if anything, that they may consider one or two outgoings, depending on who comes in. And the two obvious candidates there are Joshua Zirkzee and Kobbie Mainoo, both of who have had very limited game time this season under Ruben Amorim. And we know that, of course, there's no desire from Manchester United to sell either of those. But if a serious offer came in, I think United would have to consider it. They are not out of the woods when it comes to PSR, but their entire focus, I think, in terms of incomings will be in the summer, when the absolute priority will be a central defensive midfield player, a number 6, if you like. And it's been made pretty clear to me that United aren't really able or planning to spend the big bucks on the sort of players they're interested there in January. They're going to keep their powder dry until the summer. And the names they're interested in are some of the stellar names that a lot of other elite clubs in the Premier League and in Europe are considering right now, with Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton and Carlos Saliba at Brighton as well. Big money for any of those, and United aren't planning to spend big money in January, as far as I've been told.
Talk to us a bit more about these outgoings, Rob, because you mentioned Kobbie Mainoo, of course, a man that would love to be involved in the setup behind you. Where do we think things are with him? And do players think about the impact a move can potentially have on their future in an England squad?
Absolutely they do, and it's an extraordinary situation for Kobbie Mainoo. Don't forget, it was only last summer that he was starting a European Championship final for England in the stadium in Berlin, in the Olympic Stadium, and it was an extraordinary moment for him. He was very much part of the England first choice starting 11 under the back end of Gareth Southgate. And Southgate had looked at a lot of options, hadn't he, in that time? And so I think it's been a shock to Kobbie Mainoo that he's gone from that to really struggling for game time now with Manchester United. But the word that's always come out from Ruben Amorim's lips is that he's still very much part of his plans. He's just working with him a lot behind the scenes personally, I think, to try and get him to understand the manager's philosophy and get him integrated into the squad as he would wish. The thing I think you have to bear in mind is we know that Manchester United are not flush with cash right now. We know that they are, every decision they make on a transfer basis has to be with PSR in mind. And of course, Kobbie Mainoo, as an academy graduate, would represent 100% profit for Manchester United, which makes him a little bit more attractive to sell. Now, it'd be wrong for me to suggest that Manchester United are trying to sell him. They're not. But if a serious offer came in for him in January or in the summer, I think it's something they would have to sit down and consider. And the same of Joshua Zirkzee. We've put a story out this morning saying that Everton are interested in the centre-forward potentially from Manchester United. Had very little game time under Ruben Amorim. And we know that Everton are interested in Ivan Toney, who I think we're going to go on to discuss in a few moments as well. So Everton very much in the market for a striker this January if they could possibly get one in. Zirkzee is one of them who is on that list. But again, from United's point of view, with Diallo and Mbeumo and Sesko injured and the other two go into the African Cup of Nations, they don't want to leave themselves high and dry by allowing any players to leave in January that they may need for the rest of the season. So I think it's quite a complicated transfer situation for Manchester United right now, and there's a lot of moving parts. What I'm talking to you about now could well change by the time we get to January, depending on the form and injury of players elsewhere.
Yeah, look at some of the summer signings there. It was one of the most expensive and exciting windows of all time, but we're 11 Premier League games in. Mark, who, if anyone, has truly lived up to their expectations? Because they're pretty big expectations with the kind of money involved.
Well, like we say, £3 billion spent, and every single football fan is crying out for their club. Sign some players, spend some money, bring in some new faces. We're desperate to see it. And clubs sometimes are reluctant to go into the window, go into Europe to sign players that don't fit the bill. Because if you get it wrong, it can be an expensive mistake. And that's where clubs don't want to be, looking back and regretting potential transfer targets that they brought into the club for big money, because it can completely affect the way things happen moving forward. It can affect the dynamic of the team, their league position and the pressure on the manager. So try and get the recruitment right. The other thing to point out, Joe, is when do you judge a new signing? Is it after 11 Premier League games, or do you need to give them 12 months, 18 months? And a lot of sporting directors and managers will say, look, We want the players to get off to the most fantastic start, but it's not always possible. Here is the first 8 of the biggest signings this summer in the Premier League. I know you can see a lot of Liverpool, Manchester United, the big clubs that have made big investments in players. And straight away, how many of those do you say have made the impact that the fans, the head coaches and the sporting directors would have hoped for?
Yeah, because I'm constantly hearing about these 3 Liverpool players in particular. We're hearing about this Isak Ekitike conundrum. We're hearing about Wirtz and that price tag and whether or not he's going to be a bit of a dud or not. That's consistently what we're hearing.
You'd probably say Hugo Ekitike is the one signing that's had an impact and is working. 6 goals in all competitions. Remember, he started the season with 3 and 3 for Liverpool. Looked like the real deal. Alexander Isak, on the other hand, no Premier League goals, just the one in the League Cup. And obviously, when he turned up at Anfield, he wasn't quite fit because of what had happened over the course of the summer. Nick Woltemade, I think he's had a really good impact with his goals, but his performances need to be better. And Newcastle fans can see already the type of player he can be. There's a connection there. So you'd say that his impact has been good. The same with Mbeumo, 5 goals in the Premier League with 1 assist. Benjamin Sesko not quite hit the ground running. Gyökeres, again, are you judging him on goals? Or are you judging him on what he does to pull defenders around, to work the channels, to be a physical presence? So you look at these straight away and you think, there's a few that are working, there's a few that are not working. And again, this is the next 8 out of the top 16 biggest spends in the Premier League. And again, you look at these players and you're thinking, some of them are working, some of them are not, and some of them you probably need to give a little bit more time before you make a judgment. But again, this is big money. You know, 60, 50 million pounds. An average player this summer was going to cost you at least 50 million pounds. You know, that was where the market was. And if you wanted a top player, you were going to have to spend over 100. It turns out that actually spending over 100 didn't guarantee that you were going to get a top player that was ready to operate straight away. I think maybe João Pedro has had a really good impact. 7 goals and assists in the Premier League for Chelsea this season. So I think that would suggest he's been a good signing at this stage. Anthony Elanga hasn't hit the ground running. We know that Johan Wissa is injured as well, which is a little bit of a problem. The same with Noni Madueke. I watched Jamie Gittings play against Wolves in the League Cup a couple of weeks ago. Looked sensational for Chelsea. The problem is, Premier League, 0 goals, 0 assists. Not got as much game time as he'd like. The same with Xavi Simons as well at Spurs. And just a couple of other potential players to look at. And these are the biggest signings for Everton, Nottingham Forest and Fulham. And straight away, Amari Hutchinson there in the middle for Nottingham Forest. I loved him at Ipswich, watched him in the Championship. I thought he was sensational for Kieran McKenna. Not worked so far at Nottingham Forest. He hasn't had a single Premier League start. Tyler Dibbling from Southampton. Again, we know that Jack Grealish has been brilliant. So therefore, his impact in the team has not been as great because he's had to get past a really talented, experienced player in Jack Grealish. But again, at Everton, that one's not quite worked out. The same with Kevin at Fulham. Their record signing, they were hoping he'd have an impact from Shakhtar Donetsk. As of now, 2 Premier League starts, no goals, no assists. So fans, wait, be patient, and just desperately hoping your club go out and spend money is not always the right thing to do.
Yeah, patience. That is the key.
You tell him.
Yes, I will. Right, let's just